So I'm going to move to Amit, around this. Finance has been the lifeblood of real estate industry. Finance was definitely one of the biggest issue, especially after the entire NBFC crisis, and more so real estate was deprived of funds which really were needed. What has been your sense around the funding trends which are emerging? What kind of projects are getting money? And as a lender, what is it really the trend that you are looking in future? Given that all these premium benefits are surely resulting in a lot of launches, but they're gonna need finance on an immediate base. So, what's your take on that?
Thanks so much, Harshul. I think it's almost inundating to be in the presence of such august co-panelists. And I think we're in one of the most exciting times of our lives. I think since 2008 Lehman crisis, I think 2021, I think has been a game changer and will be a game changer for the next decade, I think, for real estate, both from a demand as well as supply perspective, including the flow of money. Harshul, let me share with you that India has been the highest recipient of FDI, even above China this quarter, topping $40 billion. Usually Indian real estate and Indian economy got less than 10% of the Asian allocation. For the first time, we're seeing a lot of money actually walk into India. So we're flooded with capital. There is so much liquidity splurging in the market that it is there for the asking, but of course in the hands of the right recipient. And I think that's very important. It's an underlined word. I think so. If you look at it, the growth of, let's say, just the realty stocks, and you've seen the way realty stocks have obviously doubled in the last 12 months, which obviously shows the amount of liquidity that has gone into going after real estate as an asset class. So from being a not such a good industry, it is now becoming the darling of the markets, purely from a capital perspective. So, I'm getting calls every week from foreign investors, from domestic institutions saying, what can we do? How can we invest? What are the opportunities for us? How can we write the first check in the country? People who are not even there in real estate, people who are not even considering, the likes of Bain Capital. I mean, Bain is a private equity player. They've got into real estate. I mean, so it's just amazing the kind of liquidity that is flowing from classical PE/VC funds globally, from family offices, from HNIs, from people who've actually made huge amount of profits on capital markets, people who are sitting on cash, and of course, maybe with the Fed tapering on the bond purchase, maybe there will be some withdrawal of liquidity because if yields go up, there may be some withdrawal, but it's not really a big concern for India. So today, I think that the liquidity supply is pretty high. Especially from private capital. So banks will still have their challenges. They're still going through NPA cleanups. They still have legacy issues to go after. Many of them are still coming out of their RBI monitoring cycles. But purely from a private capital, NBFCs are getting more money. They're starting up. Private equity is coming in a large way. We are finding a lot of capital in the funds. So one, supply is not a problem of money. Second, in terms of the recipient, of course, as I said, has to go to the right hand. So anybody with a demonstrated track record of handling institutional capital, of having the governance standards, of having deep organization structures, having the right products, having good brand equity. I mean, those are the key underlying themes for any investor. I mean, they're not going to punt with their money anymore, but they're certainly willing to put capital behind the right players. And I think money is available for everything. We ourselves are going after redevelopment, special situations, stressed assets, greenfield, brownfield development. So I think there's liquidity across the board. So I am very excited about the current state of things. You've seen the way money is coming to REITs. I mean, in the lockdown, we saw one of the largest billion-dollar REITs getting listed and absorbed, more than 5x of the subscription value. That trend is only likely to continue and accelerate. In fact, we're talking to one of the largest insurance companies yesterday and say, bring us more REITs, bring us more commercial assets. There's so much money available for REITs, for buying into commercial assets that, it's not funny. So despite the fact that there is a defensiveness about commercial asset class because of work from home or work from or digital or whatever else you describe, I think there is no dearth of capital in actually going out and buying real estate assets, including commercial assets, and building them out as well, because people do believe that normalcy will resume. And of course, the footprint and the configuration may change a bit, but clearly there's a lot of money there as well. So, I mean, we've seen warehousing, we've seen every asset class we talk about. I don't think capital is a constraint, but yes, I think the capital is going to be availed by maybe 30% of the developers in the country. 70% will struggle. And those 70% have had legacy issues, have had start-stop issues, had credibility issues, do not have a sense of continuity of business. Maybe they're trying to finish a couple of projects and don't know what they're going to do in the future. The next generation is not coming in. So those 70% may not really be serious contenders. But I think for the top 30%, I don't think there's a concern.
Oh, that's great insights. Consolidation is clearly the sign of any industry looking to go organized. And that's really on a very positive note coming from a lender and especially looking at the finance situation. So I have a slightly different question for you, Amit. We've seen the emergence of self-redevelopment in the real estate sector. And while there's been a lot of talk around it, there's a lot of euphoria, but the on-ground action doesn't seem to be happening, especially from finance perspective. And I've known personally that you've had one or two successful case studies around self-redevelopment. So what is this particular code that you've cracked, and what are your thoughts around self-redevelopment and its near future, especially given that Mumbai has exhausted virtually all the lands that are there. Only redevelopment is the only possibility. And the bigger developers of the world are not able to execute the smaller projects. And the developers executing the smaller projects are really not continuing in the same velocity. So self-redevelopment becomes possibly the only alternative. But however, it isn't working presently in the pace at which it was envisaged when it came as a concept. So what are your thoughts around self-redevelopment, Amit?
A very interesting question, Harshul, and I think you rightly hit the nail on the head when saying that Mumbai is a redevelopment city. 70% of the stock needs to come from redevelopment. We've seen a lot of push on 3310 SRA development, and I think that really set the tone for redevelopment. Then 337 and 339, which again got accelerated in cluster redevelopment and cess building redevelopment. I think so. If you look at the entire code set up by the government under the DCR, they've actually created huge incentives for these three type of developments, whether it's MHADA, whether it's SRA, or whether it's cluster or old building development. Unfortunately, there is no great incentive built for self-redevelopment otherwise. So obviously that is one limitation factor. While the code exists and there's promotion saying it's possible to do it, please go ahead and do it, we'll support you. But I think to that extent, it's only it's only a plaque on the wall. It's not so much so an implementation that you would need from the government that it can actually be accelerated, because clearly you don't get additional FSI in self-redevelopment. You'll get the same FSI as any other project. You don't get reduction in premiums. You don't get any other incentives. So really speaking, what others can get, a self-redevelopment project doesn't get. Which also really means that somebody who wants to do it has to actually find the means to do it themselves. Now, society members may not have the means to do it themselves, right? So whether it's paying for rent, paying for their own accommodation, paying for the corpus, paying for some of the other things. So I think those are inherent challenges as to how a society is going to go and self-redevelop, given its means, given its understanding, and on the lack of any incentives. So those are the constraints. And having said that, I think there's a huge opportunity too. And I think the opportunity really is because of this 50% premium reduction. I think one of the larger constraints in redevelopment was there was no margin left for developers. I think between 2010 and 2014, we saw a huge amount of people go out and start getting into self-redevelopment or development or society development, signing projects all over western suburbs. And when the premium started to come in, post 14, 15, which was marked to ready reckoner and everything became premium based, after the new DCR, that became a very huge limitation for people to actually go out and start doing redevelopment, because the premium cost was just too high. And just that fungible was not enough, free fungible for the existing occupiers. So I think it became economically unviable. I know in the areas, for example, you're doing in Matunga, you're doing in Santa Cruz, the actual cost of development was more than the revenue that they could earn from the free sale component. Because one, the prices had softened. Okay, and the second is that the costs have gone up astronomically. And the expectations of the occupiers was also very high. Okay, I want 40% more, I want 50% more, I'm staying in 400, I want 1,000 square feet. So I think there was a lot of misalignment of interest and commonality of objectives. I think that has changed dramatically first after pandemic. because a lot of things changed. First is, I think people started to realize कि घर जो है वो भी मिल गया, तो I'm very happy. Maybe a little more. Okay, so I'm not now trying to squeeze the developer, give me 2x or 2.5x or 3x of the area I own, give me so much rent, so much compensation. So I think there's a lot of rationality amongst the occupiers. I think that was the first point. The second, of course, is this whole rationalization of premium. And I hope it gets extended beyond December. Because if it doesn't, then again, there will be a spoke in the wheel on that side. So whoever actually crosses the finishing line by December of this year will still go under that. Those who don't will again still get caught with the higher premiums, and that again will become a challenge. So I think those constraints apart. So we are very happy because I think it creates a very cohesive environment between the stakeholders. So there is a DM or a PMC, which is like a developer with good amount of background. There's a society and their members who are not warring with each other. Now, for the first time, the tenants or the society members are actually joining hands with a PMC or a DM saying, let's make it together. Otherwise, there was a constant war. And that really disrupted things, over and over again. People are going to court against each other and other issues. So I think that cohesiveness, I think, is one of the strongest bonds which excites us. The fact that they're willing to give up their homes, they're willing to give up their lands, mortgage it, allow the development to happen, accelerate it, be rational about the price, saying, "Theek hai, whatever the market price, sell it." Because we want to come back fast. We're not working for profits. We're working for actually entering into a new house, which today we're seeing videos of how dangerous and dilapidated Mumbai buildings have become. And I think that's something which has hit people post-COVID. We cannot stay in this environment anymore. We need a solid home for ourselves, for our children, for our grandchildren to work, play, and live out of, because now it's become the home which affords all these three things. It's not just residence, it's workplace, it's entertainment place, it's social place. So I think that has become a very important factor. So projects which have these elements, where the society is aligned, they've got a good PMC or a DM, where they're willing to come together, 100% of them, and offer it, willing to contribute some part of their savings towards their rent costs, etc. I think there is no dearth of opportunity there. And I think that's an opportunity we should not miss. And it's unfortunate that people are not able to see this fact. I think people are using classical models, and they're still stuck 10 years ago in issues that they've seen with redevelopment, issues they've seen erupting between stakeholders, this whole sort of, change of regulations. So I think they're still stuck with the legacy mindset. I think the future is this. If it can be further propagated by the government through these premium discounts, by rationalizing the cost of redevelopment, I think the opportunity is bigger than maybe an SRA opportunity, because people would like to actually go and develop these buildings than go after large SRA buildings. That's more difficult. So we are very excited.
I think I completely agree with you. When this entire scheme of self-redevelopment was envisaged, there were certain benefits which were to come along with it. What happened was the concept stayed, but the benefits never came in, and which actually has made life a little complicated over there. But I'm sure, in the coming times, those benefits which were envisaged, at least those, even if they come in, that'll be a game changer. But it's good to know that, you are being positive about self-redevelopment and you're working actively in this space. I think solution was clearly the buzzword for this conclave, which was themed around regaining real estate business momentum. We got solutions from developers' perspective with inputs from Rishabh and Ashokji. We got solutions from sales, marketing, and intelligence perspective from Harishji. And we got solutions from finance perspective from Amitji. And lastly, there is hope for all those stalled housing projects. Conciliation, win-win approach, and moving forward is the rightful case study which Ramesh Prabhu sir highlighted. On this note, I would conclude the conclave. Given the paucity of time, we won't be able to take the live questions. But however, the panelists would be available in audience. So during the breaks going forward in the discussion, feel free to get hold of them. Thank you. You guys have been a wonderful audience, and it was a pleasure moderating this session. Thank you.